Samantha Lorne, once a dazzling Playboy model admired for her beauty and charm, turned her fading fame into a weapon, luring wealthy older men on dating apps into a web of lies so intricate that even detectives struggled to see where seduction ended and crime began. Samantha Lorne had lived her life in the glow of flashbulbs, her beauty admired by thousands, her name once printed across glossy magazine covers. For years, she had been the perfect image of glamour, a former Playboy model whose charm and confidence made her a staple at high-end events. But as time passed and new faces replaced hers, the spotlight began to dim. The invitations slowed, sponsorships faded, and so did the income that had once flowed so easily. Samantha wasn't ready to surrender her life of luxury. The designer clothes, the five-star hotels, the shimmering world she'd built. She refused to let it slip away. That's when she discovered a new way to keep her fantasy alive. The idea came one night as she scrolled through her phone, flipping through dating apps out of boredom. She noticed how many older men there were, successful, lonely, and looking for someone to fill a void. They weren't after youth alone. They wanted attention, admiration, and someone who could make them feel young again. Samantha realized she could give them exactly that, but at a price. She reinvented herself with precision. Her profile was a work of art, soft lighting, confident poses, a carefully written bio that hinted at intelligence and mystery. Within hours, messages flooded in. Some men offered dinner, others offered gifts. All of them were eager to please. At first, it seemed harmless. She let them believe she was genuinely interested, accepting their generosity while maintaining an illusion of affection. But soon, Samantha realized she could take it further. She began crafting a story about a new business venture, an exclusive fashion and lifestyle brand she claimed to be developing. Her tone was convincing, her charm disarming. She told them she was seeking investors, people who believed in her vision. One by one, her admirers began transferring money, each convinced they were helping the woman of their dreams chase her passion. Every transfer strengthened her confidence. The money poured into her accounts, allowing her to upgrade her wardrobe, stay in luxury hotels, and post pictures of herself in exotic destinations. To anyone watching online, Samantha seemed to be thriving, living her best life. In reality, she was weaving a delicate web of lies. She kept a notebook hidden in her apartment, recording details of each man, their job, their income, their weaknesses. She made sure no two stories overlapped. Each man believed he was the only one. Over time, her scheme became second nature. She learned how to detect suspicion before it surfaced, how to keep each victim hooked just long enough to drain their trust and their wallets. The thrill of manipulation replaced the excitement she once felt in front of a camera. What started as survival had turned into something darker, a game of control and power. But beneath her perfect exterior, cracks were beginning to form. The money was addictive, but the lies were multiplying. What Samantha didn't know yet was that her name was already appearing in quiet police reports filed in different states, and someone had just begun connecting the dots. Detective Ryan Keller had seen every kind of deception, from small-time fraud to elaborate investment scams, but nothing about the case on his desk felt ordinary. It began with a single report from a retired businessman in Los Angeles who claimed he had been tricked by a woman he met on a dating app. The details seemed straightforward, a classic case of financial exploitation. But as Keller read further, the name of the woman caught his attention. Samantha Lorne. He recognized it instantly, not from police records, but from an old magazine he'd once seen in a waiting room. A former model, glamorous and well-known, now accused of manipulating an older man into wiring her thousands of dollars for a supposed fashion startup. Keller felt a flicker of curiosity. Celebrities rarely crossed into his world of digital fraud, and when they did, it was usually headline-worthy. He began tracing her digital trail, looking into her social media accounts. Everything about her online life appeared carefully curated. Each image told a story of luxury. Champagne on yachts, beaches in Mykonos, penthouse views in New York. Yet something felt off. Keller noticed that her location tags didn't match her flight history. Her photos posted from Paris were taken on the same day airline records showed her landing in Los Angeles. She was building an illusion, a life designed to dazzle and deceive. Within a week, another report arrived, this time from a banker in Florida. The man described the same woman, the same business proposal, the same kind of loss. Keller's instincts sharpened. He cross-referenced the two complaints and found overlapping transaction patterns, money funneled through identical offshore accounts. Each transfer led to a new company name, all of which dissolved within months. The coordination was too precise for one person to manage alone. Someone was helping her. Digging deeper, Keller found records linking the bank accounts to a man named Marco Ruiz. His name appeared on small business filings and rental agreements in multiple cities. Marco was a nightclub promoter with a record for minor fraud charges, mostly related to fake credit card schemes. The connection between Samantha and Marco was undeniable. Old event photos showed them together, smiling in dimly lit VIP lounges. Keller began piecing together the pattern. Samantha lured the victims in, and Marco handled the money once it changed hands. The scale of their operation grew clearer each day. Keller uncovered a trail of victims scattered across the country, doctors, lawyers, and entrepreneurs, all with similar stories of trust turned into betrayal. The total loss was in the millions. He compiled the evidence quietly, knowing premature exposure could drive them underground. Still, there was one detail he couldn't ignore. In recent weeks, Samantha's transactions had become more frequent, larger, and riskier. It meant she was either desperate or preparing for something bigger. Keller suspected the latter. She had outsmarted others before, but now her name was at the center of a growing investigation. Somewhere between her luxurious facade and her hidden accomplice, her perfect plan was starting to unravel. Marco Ruiz had never been interested in fame or glamour. He preferred to work in the shadows, where control and calculation mattered more than appearances. His world revolved around numbers, hidden accounts, and encrypted messages. While Samantha played the charming role of the innocent dreamer, Marco was the architect behind every wire transfer and every digital disguise. He understood how to move money through layers of shell companies, each one more untraceable than the last. To outsiders, he appeared to be a harmless event promoter with a taste for expensive watches. But behind closed doors, he was the silent engineer of a growing empire built on deceit. Samantha trusted him completely, or at least she thought she did. Their partnership had started years earlier when they met at a private party in Beverly Hills. She was already struggling to maintain her fading spotlight, and he saw in her the perfect face for his next scheme. Marco didn't need beauty. He needed persuasion, and Samantha had plenty of that. Together, they created an operation that thrived on illusion. Every photo she posted, every word she typed, was part of a calculated strategy. Marco set up fake business websites, complete with fabricated reviews and investor portfolios. Samantha became the brand, the front, the fantasy. The men she met online never stood a chance. Over time, the operation evolved into a system. Samantha would lure wealthy men, charm them with promises of exclusivity, and persuade them to invest. Once the money was sent, Marco would immediately launder it through a sequence of crypto exchanges, spreading it across multiple wallets before cashing out. They used code words during communication and never met in public unless absolutely necessary. Marco monitored everything from a distance, ensuring their tracks stayed invisible. For months, their plan ran flawlessly. They traveled across states, living under aliases, renting high-end apartments with fake IDs. Samantha's confidence grew, but Marco's caution deepened. He began noticing inconsistencies in her behavior, unexplained purchases, messages she didn't share, trips she took without his knowledge. The more money they made, the more careless she became. He worried she might slip up, but greed had blinded them both. Then came the message that changed everything. One of their victims, a retired police officer from Arizona, had stopped responding after losing a significant sum. Samantha thought nothing of it. Marco, however, sensed danger. He ran a background check and froze when he saw the man's history in law enforcement. What Samantha dismissed as another lost contact, Marco saw as a ticking clock. He knew the man wouldn't stay silent for long. While Samantha prepared to meet a new client in Las Vegas, Marco began to notice digital chatter online, small mentions in private fraud investigation forums, threads linking similar scams to her name. Someone was putting the puzzle together. The walls were closing in, and for the first time, Marco felt the tension of being watched. He tried to convince Samantha to disappear for a while, but she refused. She believed they were untouchable. Marco realized too late that confidence, not exposure, would be their downfall. The Mirage Hotel shimmered under the Nevada sun, its glass facade reflecting the desert light like a polished diamond. Inside, Samantha Lorne walked through the marble lobby wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk dress that moved like water. Her steps were confident, deliberate, every movement rehearsed. She was there for one reason: to finalize what she believed would be her biggest deal yet. Marco Ruiz had already arrived earlier that morning, using a separate entrance to avoid attention. Their plan was simple: meet, divide the latest payments, and disappear for a few weeks while the money settled into hidden accounts. What neither of them knew was that their every move was being watched. Detective Ryan Keller had been waiting for this moment for months. The retired police officer's report had led him straight to Las Vegas, and through weeks of surveillance, he had confirmed their pattern. Samantha always handled meetings in person, while Marco managed the financial side remotely. Using digital traces, Keller's team had followed a series of encrypted messages between them, and the mention of Room 3207 at the Mirage became the thread that tied the operation together. Now, a small undercover team occupied nearby rooms, cameras positioned discreetly in hallways and elevators, recording every step. Samantha checked in under a false name, presenting a fake ID so flawless that even the hotel manager didn't hesitate. She requested a suite with a view of the Strip and ordered champagne before heading upstairs. Minutes later, Marco joined her, carrying a black duffel bag that he never let out of his sight. Inside, according to Keller's later findings, were multiple passports, unregistered phones, and stacks of $100 bills. The pair spent hours inside the room, going over ledgers and encrypted laptops, unaware that hidden microphones were capturing fragments of their conversation through the wall. By evening, Keller had enough to act. He contacted the Las Vegas Police Department and secured a search warrant. The timing had to be perfect. Too early, and they might destroy evidence. Too late, and they could vanish. His team waited for Marco to make a move. Around midnight, security footage showed Marco leaving the suite and heading toward the parking garage with the duffel bag. Officers followed him quietly. At the same time, Keller prepared to intercept Samantha as she checked out the following morning. Dawn broke over the city as Samantha descended the elevator, her luggage neatly packed, her demeanor calm. She didn't notice the plainclothes officers stationed near the exit until it was too late. Within seconds, she was surrounded. Her reaction was cold and wordless. Marco, still in the garage, was tackled moments later, trying to unlock his rental car. Inside their suite, investigators found exactly what Keller had hoped for: evidence of a massive, coordinated fraud. Dozens of fake IDs, handwritten notes with victims' names, offshore account details, and an open laptop displaying cryptocurrency transfers. The once glamorous model who had fooled so many now stood in silence as the flashing red and blue lights from police cars reflected off the hotel glass, marking the end of her illusion and the unraveling of the empire she thought would last forever. The courtroom was silent when Samantha Lorne was brought in, her wrists bound loosely in steel cuffs that clinked with each step. Cameras flashed from the press gallery, capturing the once celebrated model now seated behind the defense table, her once lavish image stripped down to a beige prison uniform and a tired expression. Marco Ruiz sat beside her, restless, his jaw clenched as the hum of reporters filled the room. For months, investigators had pieced together the fragments of their operation, and now everything was laid bare before the court. Piles of evidence covered the prosecution's table: bank statements, digital records, fake documents, and screenshots of online messages that detailed every stage of their manipulation. The prosecutor described their operation as one of the most calculated dating scams in recent history, explaining how they used beauty, trust, and technology to exploit vulnerability. Victims sat quietly in the audience, men who had once believed in Samantha's lies, now united by the same humiliation. They listened as their stories were retold in chilling detail: the promises of partnership, the glamorous meetings, the wire transfers that vanished into accounts that never existed. Each piece of testimony pulled Samantha further from the world she had built and deeper into the reality she could no longer control. Marco's attorney argued that he had been manipulated by Samantha, that she was the driving force who used him to handle the dirty work. In contrast, her defense claimed she had been drawn into Marco's criminal world, seduced by his promises of safety and financial stability. But the evidence told a different story. The messages recovered from their encrypted devices showed her initiating most of the plans, her words precise and confident. She had selected the victims, coached Marco on timing, and even suggested ways to mask their transactions. The narrative of innocence fell apart with every revelation. When the verdict was read, there was no suspense left in the room. Both were found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. The sentence was severe: 12 years for Samantha and 15 for Marco. As the judge delivered the ruling, Samantha remained still, her eyes fixed on the polished surface of the table in front of her. Marco exhaled sharply, the first visible sign of emotion since the trial began. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, broadcasting the fall of the glamorous model whose deception had captivated the public. Weeks later, Samantha's mugshot circulated online, contrasting sharply with her past photo shoots. Her once admiring followers turned curious observers, fascinated by the downfall of someone who had seemed untouchable. In prison, the silence of her cell replaced the buzz of luxury hotels and high-end parties. Yet even there, whispers began to spread. A new dating profile had appeared online, using her photos and phrases eerily similar to hers. Authorities suspected a copycat or an associate still at large, but some investigators quietly wondered if Samantha herself had found a way to continue, hidden behind technology once again. Her empire of deceit had ended in chains, but the illusion she created seemed determined to live on, lingering like a shadow she could never escape.